I have received quite a number of nice term papers here, and it was my pleasure to go through these papers tonight. I'm glad to see that you had been studying and listening and thinking about some profound truths. So let me see, I shall first of all call those who have written papers, because they have already done their homework and have done a lot of thinking. And I would want everybody to be very brief, in presentation, 3 minutes, and then I shall ask whoever wants to make a comment on that. In that way I shall set the ball rolling, and I would like for all of you to participate and get into some deep, intensive thinking about the whole problem. We had been discussing in Zen Buddhism and Existentialism, enlightenment, freedom, which are things of very fundamental importance to all of us, because that's what we are striving for in our spiritual life, in enlightenment and freedom and liberation and peace and the spirit of love. Let me see. I see that there are someone present here tonight. Okay, I shall go by the roll here. Paul Chin. Good. I see you have written a nice paper. So would you like to say a few words about...
I'm kind of shy to start.
You are? Your name just happens to be at the top, That's why I called you. So you want to wait for a while, right? Okay, sure. Okay. Then I see Richard here, Richard Dale. He's not here. Richard Dale. John Glancy is not here. Ronald Hall. Ram Jha. Yes, I have read your paper too. Would you like to say anything? Would you like? Fine, briefly, why not say a few words about, what you have got out of this, class, or main thing, uppermost in your mind. Why not stand up so that everybody can hear?
My topic was that social self of this meets you in relation to the social self.
Yes, I was really reading that, and while I was reading, I was wondering why you took a subject which, quite relevant to this course. All that you want to tie up in any way, this concept of the social self.
The entire existentialism. The existentialism is rather based on that social self.
Mm-hmm.
He says that individual self is not so meaningful as it is when it is based on the society. In relation to society, existentialism has a meaning. The entire system has interrelationship. It is not individual and it is not just social. An individual should not do anything at the cost of society. Neither society should do anything at the cost of the individual. Both are interrelated, and only then any living would be worth living. Otherwise, if anybody is annoyed with the society, he should take some. He should seclude himself and go to some mountain or live in forest or separate from society. As long as he is in society, he is one of the elements of the society. Society is composed of all the individuals. So the building of the individual is the building of one of the links of the society.
Okay, so this is the one point. Then you are emphasizing that the relation between the individual and society, the social environment, is a relation of mutual dependence and interrelationship, right? The individual is dependent upon the society and therefore has an obligation to society, and society also, for its progress, is dependent upon the individual. That is the main point you have emphasized. Good. Anybody wants to make any comment on that view? Just feel free, I want all of you to feel free to speak up whatever is in your mind. It can be criticism, it can be appreciation, it can be adding something else to what he has just now said. Any comment? Well, maybe everybody needs some time. Yes.
Yeah, this is an impression from my reading, which has not been following the text too much, but the impression I get from existentialism is that it is extremely individualistic in the sense that the person has a great responsibility to see to himself and to develop himself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess the point would be that this is done in the context of social society. But yet the existentialist is largely an artist who stretches his self-actualization to some strong degree, not being a conformist person, not simply being a follower, not simply being conditioned, but he has the responsibility to stretch himself and to be what he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is what we call he has to build individually. He will build himself and not in relation to the society. If he wants individually to build himself, then he should be somewhere monk or separate, in the forest or have individual devotion or spiritualization, something like that. But as long as he is in the society, he is a member of the society, he should go along with society. And he is one of the parts of the society. He is the witness of the society.
Would you say that he would go along to the extent of conforming to the accepted standards and values of the society? Would you
he should regard the values of the society.
I see.
And he should.
So this is your opinion, or this is the view of existentialism?
This is the view. I mean, the entire what Mead says.
Oh, you are talking about the view of Mead here. So you see, we should, make everything clear, in this presentation. He is what you are saying is from the existentialist standpoint, which is relevant to actually our discussion. And what you are saying, you are presenting the view of Professor Mead, who is a pragmatist, thinker of America. John Dewey, William James, John Dewey, Professor Mead, along the pragmatist line of thinking. So he is representing that viewpoint, and you are speaking on behalf of existentialist outlook. So
what do you do in an authoritarian society where the society asks for a great deal of conformity and hiding and suppressing? What then is there to do?
Yes.
Nazi Germany or...
So he is now bringing up an important point here, a problem situation, that when and in a society which is very authoritarian, which does not give too much freedom or freedom of expression to the individuals, so what do you do?
Yeah, that means say that society should not do anything at the cost of the individual. Nor any individual should do anything at the cost of the society.
So then he is now bringing up a problem that when the society is authoritarian to the extent that that it is doing something to injure the freedom of the individual, then what? I mean, this is the problem he is bringing.
Yeah, that in that respect that there is no complete existentialism existing here. Whether it is a communistic dictatorship or sort of Hitler type dictatorship or any type of dictatorship like that is not good, is doing the service to the entire mankind.
So that system you don't approve of, right?
No, that I don't approve.
So then what would you say should be done?
According to me, that the individuals should do...
Then they can protest.
Yeah, they should do everything morally. The society, duty, morality and duty, they are interrelated. That is, it is man's duty to work for the society, so man has a right to get from the society. The same way, society has duty for the individuals, and society has also right at the time of need to take help from the individuals. Call the individuals for the help of the society. Both are interrelated, duty and morality and personality and the society. They are interrelated, and that is the basis of Buddhist existentialism.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Sit down. Yes, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I think you speak on a very ideal kind of situation, which isn't too apt to be experienced by us. And I think Frankl, he wrote a book, I think, From Death Camp to Existentialism, where he spoke of his ability to attain a freedom even in the midst of very severe oppression. And it didn't have to do with the external situation, but it had to do with his internal state and his awareness. And that's where the freedom is at. It's not the external.
Yeah, that's what we say. It is social self. It is not. He's not talking about society or just self. He said the individual self is not just individual. It is social self. He has obligations for the society, and he has duty for the society. So he has rights and duties. If he works for the society, he demands that thing from the society. This way, the society and the individual, they are interrelated. That was mentioned. Just not self, just not society, but social self. That is the viewpoint of the.
Okay, let us now turn to other viewpoints. Marjorie Carter, yes, I wrote. You submitted a paper, right? Okay. You would like to briefly say anything on the basis of your term paper?
I guess I approached the subject in terms of its relevance for me in a very personal sense. And,
Please, why not, so that everybody hears. So that's fine. So whatever point you have emphasized, you can briefly state.
Yeah, I appreciated particularly some of the Zen message about beyond the duality, achieving that point beyond the duality, and this freedom from attachment, and I guess the pathway of using meditation as the path to achieve this kind of
non-dual experience, you mean?
right.
Yeah.
Yes. I think I sense that there's everything around us that pulls against this in our society, and especially the emphasis on the intellectual mind.
Subject-object dichotomy.
Right, yes.
I mean, there is too much of dichotomy, division and conflict in our present social structure, and it makes it difficult for an individual to attain a kind of unity of consciousness. That's what you are meaning. And you feel that Zen shows some way to attain this unity of consciousness. That is your point? Yeah. Anybody wants to make any comment on that? This is the point she is making, and she has emphasized in her term paper that in our present social structure, there is so much of division and conflict, and at the root of all these conflicts is the dichotomy of subject and object. That means I am the subject over here, you are the object of my knowledge and consciousness and experience over there. And so starting with this dichotomy, we create other divisions in our life, barriers we erect, and whereas the ideal, the knowledge, the real wisdom lies in an experience of unity, unity of us all. And Zen, as a spiritual discipline, shows us the way how we can achieve that kind of unity of awareness. So this is the point. Anybody wants to make a comment?
Yeah, I wonder if she's read any of Krishnamurti.
Yeah.
That's on my list next.
Well, then I would like to raise the question. In Krishnamurti's writing, I find a promise that you can instantaneously get there. In other words, he promises you that you can get this kind of unitary awareness. Now, I have never quite understood how he gets there.
How? So the big question will arise, how? Right? So what would you say?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm trying to find the answer myself.
I
how
see.
can I get there?
Yeah. Okay, anybody has any answer to that question? Oh, really? Yes?
I've had that 2 or 3 times. I've had
I see.
in the brain,
I see.
out of the body. All you do is meditate and stop the mind, and the consciousness raised by itself. As simple as that.
I see, I see. So he has an answer there, to your question, that you meditate, and when you meditate and stop the mind, then consciousness arises and leads you on into a kind of unity consciousness.
Right. You have to quickly
Stop the mind. Okay. Okay, so that is an answer. Yes?
I have a feeling you're saying that it's not that we're going to try to get there, we
Yeah.
are already there
I see.
originally.
I see.
What is keeping us away from there is because our ignorance is, the way people, our inhibition, our habits of doing things. If we can stop this habit
Yeah.
of thinking or forming this all kind of concepts to keep us away from there,
Yeah.
even for a moment,
So,
we are there already.
right. So, what is needed is stopping the operation of the ignorant mind, right? Right. So, it almost comes to what he's saying, that you stop the mind through meditation and you have it. About, yeah. Huh?
That is theory.
Yeah, that is theory. The thing, of course, is that to what extent we can stop the mind or get rid of this ignorance which is standing in between us and that.
Might take the whole life to a completion.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I.
Well, there seems to be a great deal of literature, however, especially in Zen. In fact, this was the counter-argument against the Soto school, as I understand, that enlightenment really is not a process of stopping the mind as such. It's a matter of being aware of the flow of the mind, but being aware in such a manner that enlightenment is achieved or takes place without stopping anything.
I see.
And this is what I've read in Zen literature anyway.
I see. So naturally, you see, this is the point on which there can be diversity of opinion. Different people have different approaches, and they attain the experience. So this is bound to be, bound to be some difference here because of the diversity of our individual approach, different ways in which attain this satori or enlightenment. So anything can go.
As you say that after stopping the mind, consciousness will automatically arise. It sounds quite inhuman.
Inhuman. Why?
Man minus mind. I don't understand what would be his existence.
I see.
Mind such a gift or reward to man is such a powerful thing that one cannot get rid of this thing and have something else.
I see. So here is a challenge then. Here is a challenge to what some others brought out. She says that if you stop the mind, then that becomes inhuman, because man is mind. That is one point now. Another point which is being raised. Let me see who wants to. Yes.
That might go into that cause and effect that we were talking about last week. That's the transcendence, which is maybe a little inhuman or above human.
Inhuman. So you would say that going attaining an above ordinary human consciousness, which is all right, which is just the thing we aspire for. That's what you are saying.
That is also part of the stage of mind. That is as your Guru says, that it is super mind, above mind, and mind is above that. That the mind is raised little further up. Then that is transcendental. And there is the experience is what we call experience is experienced by the mind, not by anything else.
Okay, you wanted to say something?
Well, I think a possible way out of the dilemma that's posed by this phrase of stopping the mind is to regard the mind that's being stopped as the rational, lower, intellectual mind that deals with logic and concrete objects and rationale and that type of thing. This, I don't think stopping perhaps is the correct term, but rather that the consciousness should be brought to such a state that this rational mind no longer is predominant, no longer assuming the whole sphere of consciousness, but a spiritual intuition, which is a different type of coach comes in this way. And this spiritual intuition is part of the deeper self of a person. So it's not a conflict between two elements within a given person. It's just an elevation of the consciousness to a higher level. But the rational mind appears to stop its functioning.
Good. I think that's a good point. You see, much of this kind of controversy or debate centers around some, semantic problem, so that somebody says that it is stopping the mind, that you gain satori. Somebody says, no, mind is the essential thing. It is by expanding the mind you gain satori. So you see, that as you can easily recognize, there is a semantic problem here. It so much depends upon what exactly is meant by this or that word you are using, Yes?
Well, perhaps if people could envision in their thought a triune spiritual complex of the makeup of what is involved in the ego, that utilizes a middle ground bridge, more or less, connection, which is the element of mind, into the three lower forms of manifestation, which would involve the dense body, the vital body, and the desire body, where we have a complexity of a total of 7, involvement in total consciousness. The three lower forms would be the unity of what we talk of as persona and shadow complex in Jungian concepts that make up the personality. This personality in its total 3 forms is connected by the link of mind to the triune spiritual form of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in our spiritual makeup, that is the comprising ego. But the ego that we only manifest in our thinking is the crust on the surface that must be transcended, and I think we experience this every night when we go to sleep. We stop the chattering mind, or whatever we're referring here to as the connecting link, and we do transcend ourselves, in effect, in sleep. Whereas the 3 bodies are rejuvenated during sleep by the unconscious spiritual nature of ourselves. And what is allowed to cross over during that time is, in my thinking, the same as transcendental meditation. The dream states that are recalled in memory are planted for a purpose by the unconscious to make us move through the ontological structure of our existence.
All right. So in that context, would you now say in a word, how do you define satori or enlightenment? In the context of what you have said.
Well, in my paper, I took a more or less negative approach to the Zen, because I felt that it was the existentialism of the Orient, and I felt that Huey Neng's concepts of introducing people to Zen with a twist of the nose or a hit on the head was as much an absurdity as some of Sartre's masochism, sadism concepts that came from the Western thinking. I think that we move far from being is and Hegel and some of the earlier teachings, and I thought that it took a very strong mind like the theologian, the comparative Christianity with the world religions, Paul Fittig. I took a theological mind to get back into where the meaning of the world consciousness was in existentialism. And then that man was about to involve himself on a whole new trek in life after he'd gone to the Orient, where he was going to get into that. And I don't think that it was his job to do. I think that that's another idea I have about his life terminating before he could involve himself, because it was for others to do as well. It wasn't all his responsibility. But I think that Zen, as explained by Suzuki, had as many divergent philosophy schools, with Stoto school and Huey Neng's concepts, that it paralleled in my mind as much as the absurdity of existentialism itself in the spiritual direction.
That is where you are noting a point of similarity between the two.
Oh, there is a similarity, because I believe that Tillich said that the structure of man is in a religious concept is to have 3 factors of essence, ontological structure and being itself. And the essence, I think, was easy to find in your satori, the same as your bliss that can be found in any religion if it's completely involved with the individual.
Okay, thank you. Any comment on that? Anybody wants?
I'd like to ask him, but he seems sophisticated. Your stress has been that Zen is very now-oriented. Existentialism tends to be future-oriented. I wonder, my feeling has been that existential also is now-oriented to a large degree, and I wonder if this gentleman agreed with me or disagreed with me, since he called existentialism or Zen the existentialism of the East.
Well,
is existentialism now-oriented or is it future-oriented in your way of
I believe that the parallel that I was making was that the eternal now can't be determined in satori concepts. You're outside of the convenience of time and space and continuum unity. You're outside of it. Existentialism is within it. But I said that I felt that in the divergent philosophies that were involved from the original concepts of what came out of India, I thought that they got into what I would consider the Oriental essential absurdity with Zen. In other words, I didn't feel that it would apply here in the West unless they would come out more with more dialogue, which was again what Tillich was advocating for a universal religion. A common ground where everybody would be with integrity in their presentation, but with full acceptance of what criticism was to be realized, which then put itself outside of it, you see. There's nothing to describe it there, and it's outside of the realm of thought. It's satori. At this point, it's existential absurdity. That position.
Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, I can't. The thing is, I can't quite agree with you that it's outside or can be compared with existentialist views of the absurd, because it seems that there's always something left in Zen that you can't really conceptualize or articulate or totally sew up for me. In fact, satori, that is to say, the experience of enlightenment, may be I don't know what the content of the individual experience is. But let's just say, for the sake of discussion, that it is outside, it is atemporal or non-temporal or something. Well, but there's also a great deal of literature in Zen wherein the student has to go back and somehow get in a dialogue with his master and discuss his state of enlightenment, so that he becomes, enlightenment is just more than simply a burst into the blue of infinity and then back into this again, back into the existentialist absurd drama. There has to be reinforcement, and there has to be an ascension of consciousness, it seems to me, to the point where oneness is totally understood by the aspiring Zen student, and then therefore enabling him to become a master.
Well, I acknowledge this in my paper. I felt that in the West, the only way that Zen would accomplish anything would be through a monastic life of understanding before you come out with it. For others, it's a questionable thing as to whether, any more than was pointed out here, that the democracy can sit on the foundation of Zen concepts in Japan. A subject was dealt with by Tillich, too, I believe.
Is Jeff fitting here? I saw he has had a paper.
I didn't put down, I said the essence is there, too.
Yes?
I think a law.
So why not, please?
Yes,
I think in the past ideas, a lot of people present Zen is common, some form of negation. And then I don't think Zen is any kind of negation or anything. I think Zen, the only thing that I think Zen advocates would be the concept of move.
Concept of?
Move, that means nothing.
Yeah, I see.
Nothing is
Emptiness, yeah.
And Zen will not argue with you positively or negatively. It's, and then also Zen is not have no concept of time, it's timeless, and also that everybody can find Zen. In other words, you can be a Zen master as a tea ceremony, or Zen master in karate, judo, anything. So it's very getting to day-to-day life. It's more or less a living thing, rather than that Zen will not argue with you on any concept or any mind, any experience, and anything like that. And then you want to argue with the concept of time.
Well, this was my objection.
Yeah, right.
Actually,
and then when you're in Satori, you are in a state of timeless.
this was exactly my reason for taking a negative approach.
So, you being happy, being a teacher or student, you find Zen. You think that is the essence of you.
Right.
You can find Zen or anything.
So you are emphasizing this point that Zen is the everyday mind, right, and non-conceptual.
No.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to comment on the dust brushing aspect and the idea of attaining harmony by eliminating the obstacles of the original faith before you were born. That hasn't been commented on. And also the matter of crisis is mentioned both in Zen theory and in existentialist theory that one has to come to a point of crisis before the enlightenment comes. It doesn't come as a result of the easy path, and then seems to artificially create crises to help the enlightenment process along.
So you are actually making 2 points. One is you like the wiping, dust wiping approach or dust brushing approach in meditation, right? And you are saying that enlightenment or satori comes by overcoming a crisis, right? These are the 2 points you are making. Anybody?
I'd like to follow that, maybe see if anybody else would like to chip in. Dr. Pearls, the Gestalt therapist, was strongly influenced by Zen Buddhism. And one of the techniques, I don't know whether he got it from them or elsewhere, is to create a crisis in the therapeutic situation, a sense of an abyss. And that to a considerable extent, that the technique is works insofar as you bring a person to his abyss, to his feeling of hopelessness, to that place he is afraid to go, to the catastrophic expectations and so forth. That suddenly he is confronted with it, and only once he allows himself to confront it does he get the effect. I don't know whether this is making the point.
So you are elaborating the point she is
I
making?
think part of the technique, if you can talk that way about it, would be to bring a person to
a crisis point.
An abyss, a catastrophic expectation, a large hole, which he then must confront and get enlightenment through.
So coming to a crisis point is a vital moment in one's growth. So let me see. Yes.
It seems to me, though, that the crisis in Zen can merely be. When we use the word crisis, we think of some very dramatic focusing of our life. But I prefer to think of it in the way that Paul was emphasizing, that it comes from some area in life. For instance, he mentioned karate and the various the tea ceremony and the other things that are done in Japanese art forms, the quick brush technique that's used in painting. Maybe I can be personal in the thing, because I had kind of a strange experience a couple of weeks ago related to this, because we were in this thing in the class. I'm an organist. And I was explaining to I was showing some people something I was playing on the organ, and I was saying, well, now with the right hand here, we're playing the soprano and the alto, and they're going in different directions. The voices of the soprano and alto are moving in different directions. Thus, my right hand is playing two different voices, and they're going in different directions. And my left hand is playing the tenor and baritone, and they too are going in different directions. And then my feet are playing another thing, and that's going in a different direction. It's going back and forth. And then I have to turn on these various stops on the organ that bring in different tones, and I'm changing keyboards and so forth. And someone said, it seems to me that no mind could master that. And wow, all of a sudden, whomp. That's what we've been talking about in this class. No mind can master it. The individual mind, that is your analytic mind, can only analyze what each finger is doing out here. You can talk about that these are playing the soprano voice, and this is playing your alto voice, and this is playing tenor. But no mind can master it. The thing is that it has to be something that transcends all this analysis, that puts it back together. And so it's no mind that puts it back together. And that is what mastery in karate or in music or any of these other things mean. It's when there is a higher transcendent synthesis, as you will, that goes beyond analyzing all these separate parts of something, puts it back together again. Is that too far-fetched?
No, that's not.
I certainly got quite a bit out of it myself.
Yeah. Good. Anybody wants to make a comment on that? Yes?
Well, I think probably the actual feeling and experiencing of knowing combines all the knowledges that you have worked together. And that when you reach the knowing point, the knowledge buildup is sort of automatic, and you reach the knowing point. And that's a form of transcendence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think after crisis there is some sort of detachment from his previous paraphernalia, and thereafter he tries to go in different direction, and that is probably a smoother. That's why I think Jim tries to get some crisis and some sort of delirium and dilemma and so forth. So he's mixed up, and then he starts making his mind.
Mm-hmm. When you want to, you wrote a term paper, you would like to say anything about your main thesis?
Yes. Well, I think of the types of freedom as being different. That in the existentialism, it seems to be more of a social aspect, dealing with people in the world, and Zen seems to be more of an individual type of involvement just with yourself. And it's kind of similar to the extrovert introvert. It takes both elements to work in the world. And so by working with yourself, like in Zen, you reach a certain point where you're better able to cope with reality in the world, which is the existentialist point of view. And also in existentialism, there is, I think, this going to this despair, this abyss, and when you reach this point, a lot of the surface mannerisms that you've acquired and attributes are kind of thrown away, and you have to go down to a deeper level, and from this level you can emerge up higher.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're saying that despair kind of thing is a necessary phase of going deeper?
For most people, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And through that you may get into a realm of freedom, eh?
Yeah, or you may go down further.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, anybody wants to say anything? Yes.
I'm reading a Satprem on Sri Aurobindo and the Adventures of Consciousness.
Yes. Yes.
And in there he quotes Sri Aurobindo on the fact that you have to go through hell,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense.
In order to go to heaven.
In order to go to heaven. That in a sense you have to live with the hell,
Yeah.
the crisis, the negative, you face up to it, live, be conscious of it.
In other words, you are seeing a parallel there, is that it?
I think I do.
I see.
You got to get caught up in the meeting.
I see. Well, it all perhaps comes to, the concept of dialectical growth, in our growth, that is the dialectical movement. You go through negativity in order to rise to higher affirmation. So, going through despair in order to overcome despair. Yes?
Could you think of it as sort of a boil that bursts? Or like the coming up of consciousness would be the abyss of the despair, or the unconscious coming up.
Oh, you want to liken it to a kind of bursting act, is that it?
Well, if we're going to use that sort of process, if that sort of process is in use, I think there's other processes. But if it happens that way, then it would be like a buildup in the unconscious that would open up, which would cause a lot of disrupting in the person's day. And then it sorts out again and heals.
Yes. Any other comment on this? You know, he was specifically referring to freedom here, and he has discussed the approach in Zen and in existentialism to freedom. Yes.
Well, there have been various times this evening that the question of individual freedom and rights have been posed against the responsibility to society. Well, I think that if you look for a solution to this problem in a political sense, that you'd never solve it. I think that there have been sufficient experiments in utopianism throughout history, and we've had certain types of social development allegedly leading to a state where freedom would be paramount. But nowhere in the history of the world that I know of do you have such a state existing. But that doesn't, I think, go to show that it can't exist. I think it could exist along the lines that Sri Aurobindo talks about. Now, you have a political philosophy called anarchism, which is the highest type of freedom available, supposedly, in an organized state. But this philosophy presupposes the highest type of individual development, too, so that every person is sufficiently concerned about the welfare of others, in addition to his own welfare, that he doesn't overstep the bounds. But this has not appeared in society, and even though there's a widespread advocation of this idea now, it doesn't appear that it will appear. But what could happen is if you would have the highest possible spiritual development of citizens, in which they would have the fullest possible expression of their freedom, but this would be such an elevated concern for other people too, the outgoing love would be so strong for other people that you'd need a minimum of state apparatus. You'd need very little political control. And what political control you had, if you can call it that, would spring out of a basis of love and friendship and concern, instead of ego and greed and selfishness. I think that one of the things I've learned from this course on Zen Buddhism, as compared to existentialism, is that the thing that I learned from Zen is that your highest faculties don't depend on reason. I think reason is a separating, divisive, pulling apart, intellectualizing something. And what Zen does when it pulls your nose is to try to draw you back to the absurdity of your intellectualization. So whereas you might characterize this nose pulling as being absurd, actually it's a counterpoint to the absurdity of too elevated type of reason. And according to Sri Aurobindo, what we need is the development of this intuition, spiritual intuition, which will lead us to our highest personal development, and this will tend to create a social organization of the same kind.
Yes.
First of all, I would like to say thank you. I'm very deeply
Would you kind of, so that everybody can hear?
First of all, I would like to say thank you. I'm deeply impressed by the gentleman's claim. Did I understand right when you say that if each individual increase his potential, his spiritualism, his potential, his inner self, then the authority, government authority, will not be that necessary? Is that what you want to say? In that case, the individualism of each human being will be increased if government authority is decreased. Is that what you want to say?
Well, to the extent that you have highly developed individuals, you don't need government.
Because the individual, highly developed individual, will have a concern for the welfare of others. That is your point. Right? So that's what he's saying, that a truly evolved individual will not be concerned only with his own private self-interest, but will have a genuine concern for the welfare of others, and
the
therefore...
idea of others. So he developed himself with the idea of others, in forming a society.
But I suppose the point also he made was that since at this time not all individuals are evolved or developed to that extent, you would say that there is need for some central control, right? So, yeah. You see, Sri Aurobindo in his Life Divine has discussed some of these things, individual as related to the society, to the collectivity.
So it's not the development of the individual itself, the individual related to society, that is the goal.
Yeah, I see. Much of the conflict between the individual and the society, again, is due to the divisive mind, divisive operation of the ordinary intellect. When we look at it right, we find that there is not much actually incompatibility. When the individual develops his potential to the best, then he is also in harmony with the society. So there is no conflict there. It is on a lower level that there is a conflict.
What about if there is the development of the individual detaching from society? The individual becomes so much upper level, or maybe of his own ideas, his own way, and he will detach himself.
To the extent that he is indifferent, right? To the extent that he is indifferent,
you think that maybe society is so way below, so far below him, that he will develop his personality almost on a utopic way. Then he will detach himself from society. He will even have no contact with society anymore, because he went way up. Could it be possible?
You would like to say anything about that?
Well, Buddhism holds, as I understand it, that there are two types of enlightenment that are available. One is the Arhat, and the other is the Bodhisattva. The Arhat becomes a recluse, a hermit, say a monk, and is solely concerned with his own personal development. And his tendency is to take his enlightenment out in merger with Buddha nature and disappear and not return to this society. He chooses to work out his own salvation, if you can put it in a Christian framework. Well, the Bodhisattva takes the same road, but after he has won his enlightenment, he chooses to come back to earth and help his fellow men reach the enlightenment that he's reached. So that put in terms of what we were talking about just now, I would say that the individual in present-day society that's solely concerned with his own freedom here and now possibly would be a dropout. He might leave society and go to the mountain someplace and just seek out his own welfare, his own spiritual development, and let society go. You might compare him to the Arhat. But the Bodhisattva, he might go to the hills for a while and work out his spiritual problems and secure his spiritual development, but he would be motivated, well, I can see the way for myself and the goal for myself, but I see that I'm a part of a larger whole, and I'm a part of the whole scheme of things, so it's my duty and responsibility to come back and help others attain their enlightenment. Well, the first man wouldn't be any danger to society. He wouldn't do it any harm or any good. He'd be outside of it. And the second person would do good to society, and he wouldn't be any harm to it. You wouldn't have to circumvent him with any laws, so to speak. He would be his love for his fellow men would be his law, and as such, he probably wouldn't violate fundamental law. He might violate conventional law. Like he might go to jail for, like Cesar Chavez has done in the letter strike. But I think although Cesar Chavez is violating an injunction, actually he's standing for a higher law, which is the right, I think, of industrial workers on the farms to a decent life. So that man would be manifesting the highest type of law. It would be the same thing as Gandhi supporting the salt strike and going to jail. I would think it would be similar.
Good. So you see what he has done here is to define the distinction between these two spiritual ideals, Arhat or Pratyeka Buddha and Bodhisattva. Pratyeka Buddha or Arhat, he strives for his own personal salvation and is removed from society. But he is no harm to society. And Bodhisattva goes a step further. First of all, he attains salvation, enlightenment. Then he is very eager to share his experiences with fellow beings and render service to fellow beings, help other people. So that, that is a kind of answer to your thinking of the possibility of a person being detached.
The risk,
Right.
the danger.
Right. Yes.
I was thinking what he was actually saying was that the person who goes and finds himself and come back and give of himself to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who goes into remote area and for personal dropout reasons never does find himself. And so he has nothing to give.
Oh, you are saying that he...
for personal reasons he leaves.
Yeah, so...
But the other person, because of concern, finds himself and then comes back and gives himself, which is the whole idea.
I see. So you are you ruling out the possibility of the former person ever finding himself or attaining?
Well, not when he uses it personal in a kind of material way.
I see. Yes. Yes.
I wonder if one implication for existentialism and here on morality is that there are two kinds of morality. One is living by any code of rules, and the other is simply facing a situation and acting right. I wonder if there isn't an important distinction to be made between a person who basically lives according to all the right philosophies, all the right rules, all the laws, and that are given to him automatically, and that person who, in a given situation, acts as appropriately as he can get his nervous system to act given the greatest enlightenment he has about the situation. In other words, there's a very, very different kind of good behavior in one and good behavior in the other. Does this relate to Bergson's notion?
You are really raising here the problem or the question regarding moral behavior.
Yes.
That you are pointing out that there can be different types of moral behavior. One is morality would mean conformity to the standard norms, standard rules and codes of ethics, morality in that sense. Another is that one does not go by the standard norms and conventional codes, but faces every situation as it is and tries to do right. This is what you are saying. Of course, there the question would arise when a person faces a new situation as it is, what is the basis of his judgment about right and wrong? What would be his standard? That question will arise at that stage, What would you like to say in answer to that question?
His enlightenment.
Then, in other words, you are saying then only an enlightened person can do that, setting aside and following the inner law, right? That's what you are suggesting. That an enlightened person need not go by standard norms and codes. He faces every situation as it comes and acts right in accordance with his inner law, right? Would you care to say anything more about this inner law? I mean, the nature of this inner law?
Me?
Eh?
I don't know it.
Yeah, that's what I was, I was asking whether you would like to say anything more about this inner law.
I say the same thing in different words. That what you call as a reformer, one should be either good follower or a good reformer. If he can't reform, if he can't change the things which are already prevailing, he is not conventional, then he should follow conventional things and go along others and follow rules and regulations. If you find anything wrong, then he should take a leadership in that respect and try to lead something and be a reformer. So that's.
But you raised your hand. You wanted to say anything, David?
Yeah. Along this line, it poses a problem for me in sort of the cultural comparison here. You take in the last World War the existentialist thinkers who took a stand against who maybe had been more or less passive, going along with society, but when it came to the confrontation with the evil as they saw it in the form of the Nazi regime and so on, they were able, whether they were Christians such as Dietrich Bonhoeffer or Sartre and Camus, they were able to take a definite stand against this type of thing. Do we have I don't know, do we have a similar reaction on the part of the Japanese Zen masters? Did they take a definite stand? Were they able to take a moral stand, or did they even have an interest in taking a moral stand? This may be one of the weak areas, we might say, of Zen as a complete thought system, in that it, as far as I know, these people didn't even consider such things. They were off in their art forms and so on, and which is where I find myself to be, but nevertheless there still is this whole other area
of social action, the area of social action.
Right.
Paul, you want to say something?
I got very confused right now right here. I don't understand how one would become a Buddha, how one would become a teacher. I mean, you reach a point that one receives enlightenment, so he would have the right to join the absolute and become a Palo, or he has the right to come back and teach and then be a leader. And so I think all this is more or less human definition and things like that. I think one is reached the point, the true enlightenment, his self, he finds his true self is illumined enough, and he will have followers. He will become a teacher, just like that. People will follow the way he's doing things and things like that. I mean, it's not this manifest destinies and missionaries things. And pretty soon you become very, very dogmatic and static. And you have Bibles coming, teaching of Buddhism and things like that.
Well, what he was trying to bring out, I think, Bert, that even after enlightenment, there can be different ways of self-expression. See, one can be a teacher in art form, art and so on and so forth, religion. Then there is also the possibility or the need of acting in the social field or socio-political field. So this is, I think, what you were trying to bring out. He says that existentialist thinkers, they emphasize the need for social action also, taking a stand against a certain structure of society, maybe radically changing it. So he was wondering whether in Zen there is any room or provision for that kind of action.
It doesn't have any action. I mean, it's not a question of things like that. If you reach the point, just like you're a movie star, the way you dress, people will follow the way you dress. Just because you are there, or you reach the point, and then you are educating, or you are a leader in some aspect of life or fashion and what have you already. And you don't have to say, well, okay, I'm your teacher, you follow me, and if I have the great code, and I have this and I have that. You don't have to. And you are up there already. You don't have to, set any rules.
If I may say, I trying to make an analogy with this person who has accomplished whatever he has accomplished, and he becomes like a bud forming. The bud is formed already. So he says, okay, I'm going further, or I'm going to teach what I gained, what I believe in. So he's going to project what he gained, what he became. So he's going to project it. And I think it is very necessary to have somebody to project this upon the ones who need this enlightenment, or this knowledge, or this training. So once they are followers, and it is true, this person becomes a leader. It is very true. But if they are followers, that means they are searching something within the person who has already gained something. Then up to the followers to reject, to interpret whatever they gained from this leader, to create an evolution within society. It's not because there is a leader who is formed that is going to be forever. There will be new evolution, conflict, exaggeration, misunderstanding, which we are going to create another evolution of what that leader was teaching.
Overcoming that conflict.
Yeah.
All right, now.
I have a thing right here. What I have in mind is Jesus, and then we tell everybody, the only thing you can go to the kingdom of God is through me. I'm the middleman. You have to accept me first in order to go to the kingdom of God. And Muhammad would say, you either accept this great code or I'll kill you. But in the Eastern case, if a yoga teacher, he's going somewhere in the wilderness and doing yogas, or a Tai Chi teacher is doing Tai Chi, and you see that thing that you want to learn there already. He's your teacher right there. You want to follow the teacher the rest of your life, and that's it. You are his disciple and things like that. And he doesn't have to turn around. Go ahead. I'm going to be the teacher. You're going to be the student. And then I'm much more superior than you are. Well, that's what the Bible says. I mean, that's the only code in the world that you can accept. To go to the kingdom of God. You have no other alternative. The other way is, either you follow me or not. I mean, I have my own thing already, and I derive enjoyment or enlightenment, story, and what have you. And then I'm practice every day, and then this is my being, this is my doing. I don't have to teach you.
We need teachers. We need teachers. We need.
It's not the question whether you need or I need to teach you or you need to learn from me. It's not the question. I mean, to them it's more or less like your illusion you want to learn. In my illusion I want to teach.
That's what Paul is saying, Michelle. What Paul is saying that people will choose their own teacher. I mean, instead of this is the point which is trying to emphasize, that instead of the teacher trying to impose his ideas that you accept me, otherwise you are doomed, Instead of the teacher saying that, what he is emphasizing is that a teacher is what he is, and he does not want to impose, but others who see that here is somebody who can give something, they just follow him or want to be taught, you see. And that's the point he's trying to bring out. Yeah. Let me see. Now, I have James Asensio. I read your paper. Do you want to say anything regarding your main point you brought out in your paper?
Well, something more personal. Oftentimes I find myself in a very despairing state of mind. Existentialism for me has shown me a way out from under it. Zen, a way to sort of blanket that feeling out from under it. So it's been, in that sense, my study of these two ways has been very personal.
So you have immensely benefited from this, huh?
I think so.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Fine. So let me see. I would like first of all to go over the names of those who have submitted their papers. Ronald Hall is not yet here.
Yeah,
I think Richard.
I am here.
Huh?
I am here. Ronald Hall.
Oh, yeah, so you, of course, we heard you, and you want to say anything more?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I want to get started or not, but...
Say something very briefly.
There are no followers, there are no teachers. I had my feeling about some of the discussion that was going on was that it was kind of beautifully absurd somehow, in an existentialist kind of way. I was impressed, however, with the problem of crisis in an individual's life, and especially how the Zen masters talked about it, and as how it related to our discussion, and also this moral kind of question about what Paul was talking about. I tend to agree with Paul, and kind of believing in the aphorism that the bees find the flower kind of thing. Now, and then I was also thinking about how if an individual who is in despair, or say he's really troubled with his own freedom, the difference between, say, going to a psychiatrist who has read a lot of Sartre, for example, or going to a Zen master, it seems to me he would ask the psychiatrist, he might say, I'm really in despair, and I really would like to obtain more freedom, more significant freedom. But I believe that the psychiatrist probably at that level would probably agree with him, and yet go on to try and somehow define or describe what he thought freedom to be, that is, the psychiatrist would. And Sartre felt that man was freedom, but it was essentially a negative kind of freedom. I think he talked about being for itself, trying to become being in itself, but that a man could not do it, only a God could do it. So therefore we were kind of hopelessly caught up in an endless series of paradox and conflict. So, but it would be kind of a heavy thing to arrive at. The psychiatrist might say, well, the essence of it is that there is a lot of paradox and a lot of conflict, and you have to realize yourself, commit yourself, and so forth. And then kind of take it from there. Whereas if the individual went to a Zen master, the Zen master might say, who is this I that wants to be free? And then take it from, in other words, turn it right back on him, just kind of pointing to him that there's nothing needs to be free in the first place. And there is no conflict, it's just all a product of something, and you're going through a very intense subjective state. I have a lot of other ideas, but I don't know. 5 minutes.
Okay. Anybody, any comment on that?
Well, all these things are good.
Huh?
All these things are good.
Mm-hmm.
All have the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
All have the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
Way we go there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let me see. We have here Richard Dale. I see him present, and you want to say a few words about your paper?
I wrote about, I characterized an aspect of Sartre's existentialism, this idea of being for itself and being in itself. And I found that Sartre's writing is rather dualistic. It seems of man as being a freely experiencing subject. So you're the subject and you organize the possibilities, your activity, you organize around the body. And the other persons for you are objects of your consciousness, of your intentional modes of consciousness. And just as these other persons are intentional objects for you, you are intentional objects for them. And in this existentialism, you find that your your freedom is limited, that you are a manipulable object of somebody else's intention, and that such a race that you can feel sort of sickness, an uncomfortable feeling. And there's sort of almost no way out of this existentialism. And this subject-object dualism is very common in most of the existential writers. And it arrives at a view of man as as separate entities floating in some sort of empty space. They have no connection with each other. They only can play about each other like computers or something. And then I went to Zen, and then immediately we have the central core notion of shunyata, which is beyond all dualistic conceptions. Zen and experience the freedom of the void, positive creative void, of fullness, feeling oneness, and it penetrating and running through into everyone. You're not alone anymore. The person is no longer just an object in your vision to be used for your intention. You're one with them, and compassion comes in. You start feeling and seeing the truth of what your own consciousness really is, and seeing this person as a part of it, and seeing in a more compassionate and understanding way that greater illumination brings. So we don't have such a downtrodden view of man. And also the style in which Zen is written is not so heavily logical and rationalistic as existentialism, which is just totally constipated in the way it's written. They take everything and put it in a nutshell, as Alan Watts says, and then they put a nutshell in the Pacific Ocean.
Okay.
So in Zen, we find sort of the anti-intellectual almost tendency, which is really not so much denying intellectualism as a tool for helping out people in the world, but breaking through perhaps a heavy tendency to just try to grasp the mind with the mind. This might be, cutting you off from being clear. And so they can stop this tendency for a while, and then being more illuminated. You can still use it, and persons who do use it, write, with more aesthetic ease, write poetry, get into art forms and things. So you can almost see the level of consciousness Zen is in, just the way they write it, the way things are written. And so the concept of freedom and existentialism is, man is man, and he's chained to time, he's a creature of physical appearances, identified with the body, etc. And in Zen we have a totally different concept of man. And Zen itself says you can never really say it in words, this will never be a substitute for direct satori experience of this positive creative void. People should work to get to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any comment on that? Yes?
Well, I kind of disagree with this view on existentialism, that man is man. I seem to think that they say that man can rise above his normal everyday qualities. He has an emergent factor there.
That is a process of growth.
I wouldn't add.
Okay, well, let him have his say. No, let him. So the point you are making is, you are objecting to the statement that according to existentialism, man is man. You are saying that according to existentialism, man is a process of growth. He is not a fixed essence. I mean, that's the point you are. Huh?
There's some element of transcendence.
He is a self-transcending process, right? Okay, so
yes. Well, the transcendence in existentialism is sort of like you can program your mind. Your mind is like a computer, a movie film or something, or a tape recording. You can program it and use all sorts of new ways. And so you have a transcendence in the changing forms, the definition of changing forms of existence, where as in the transcendence would have to be affected in time, would be beyond time. It's the original nature, seeing what's in its own nature, true nature. But I don't think it's either Zen. It's not either at where Zen might say where it's at, or existentialism. Obviously, keep on growing and becoming more and more aware of your consciousness, even if you're a spiritual consciousness. You always have to remain balanced. And if we have people who become too anti-intellectual and just stick to the Zen thing, what are we going to do in the world today? I mean, how are you going to live in the cities and things, work with people, help turn them up? You don't have to be attached to any stuff, but recognize all of them.
Okay.